Hi, I'm John, and this is a Super Saiyan Blue Goku figure. But what if I turned him into Super Saiyan Goku Black from the Dragon Ball Super manga? Speaking of, Dragon Ball Super is coming back. Do you think they'll add this form into the anime? Anyway, this timely collaboration was a request by member Applethroat, who has his own YouTube channel dedicated to Dragon Ball figures, whether it be showing the best ways to display them, ranking them, and even reviewing them. So make sure you go check out his channel in the description below. Alrighty, let's get started. First, I wanted to change this Goku's mouth to be more like Goku Black's iconic grin, so I had to cut it out. Then I sculpted in a new mouth, which I did in 2 separate sessions. In the first session, I shaped the interior of his mouth to make sure that the position was solid. And once it cured, I added in the finer details like the lips and the wrinkles. The next key detail to add to Goku Black was his earring. I drilled a hole into his ear and stuck an armature wire inside for some extra stability. When I went to add the earring itself, the putty was just not sticking to the wire, so I rolled it into a ball instead, and once it cured, I drilled a hole into the ball and glued it on. Voila! Mrs. Hobbyroon made the suggestion that his eyes were just too big to be Goku Black's. And who am I not to listen? I added in some clay underneath his eyes to make them a little bit more thinner and a little bit more sinister. But a little sinister isn't sinister enough. I figured I would add in a little bit of a nose wrinkle to give it a little bit more character. Moving down to his neck, it was time to work on the undershirt. The goal here is to add as little bulk as possible since Goku Black has a relatively trim design. To do that, I only filled in the areas inside of his muscle definition. Then I marked a line across his neck to make sure the turtleneck was even, and slowly added putty down his neckline to cover up the definition. While this cured, I made my way over to his arms. I had to cut down Goku's wristbands, which were actually sculpted in. Once I sanded them smooth, I also filled in the muscle definition as a baseline. I was really nervous about the next part. Somehow, I haven't really sculpted in actual clothing since I did Post Boy Piccolo over a year and a half ago. And not to put myself down, but not so good in hindsight. But one big takeaway I've learned from sculpting everything over the past year and a half is that less is more. And using little noodly bits and slowly building up the pieces is the way to go. I added them in all the places I thought clothing wrinkles would go, shaping them to be more angular and blending them into each other the best that I could, and making sure that I kept the arm profile incredibly slim. After I got the hang of it, I went back up to the neck and added in some extra wrinkles there too. Once the arms were all done, I did take the opportunity to sculpt in his time ring. I also had to make some minor adjustments to the torso, including this sash. First I had to plug up this little hole in the sash where Goku's belt tie was. And then I had to fix the tunic. Goku's orange tunic has these slits on the side while Goku Black's doesn't. So I filled in the slits with some putty and made some adjustments to the front to make it more accurate. Speaking of accurate, these boots that Goku has here are too short and stubby to be Goku Black's slim white boots. I decided to use these Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta boots from my parts bin. I trimmed down the yellow parts of the boots not only to get rid of the ridges at the end, but to shape them to be more in line with Super's art style rather than that rounder Daima boot style. Then I sanded everything down to be ultra smooth. But these longer, slim boots aren't going to fit on Goku's pants like this. So of course the only way to make them fit is to make some new pants. Well, half. Knowing that my X-Acto knife wasn't going to cut through these pants, I went straight for the hot knife, but it just wasn't cutting it. So my next option was this giant Japanese wood saw. Why do I have this? I actually bought this a long time ago after I had trouble cutting something. I forget what. And someone suggested that I get a saw. So I ordered this and never took it out of the box until now. Had I known it was this big, I probably would have returned it, but now it's too late. But at the end of the day, very useful, so be sure to stay tuned for the next time I use it. Then I grabbed some armature wire and stuffed it inside the leg holes. Once they were sort of in there, I twisted them with a drill to make sure that they were super sturdy. Then I stuffed the boots with some epoxy putty and stuck the new bones into the boot, making sure of two things. One, that the figure stood up straight, and two, at the same height as the original Goku. Then I shaped some putty around the wire to make sure everything was Super Saiyan solid. Once the inner legs were cured, it was time to sculpt on some new pants. I laid some fat noodles onto the legs since Goku Black's pants are super baggy and the ends sort of just stuff into his boots. Once I got the general shape, just like the shirt sleeves, it was a matter of angling the cloth in the right ways and making sure that the clay blended into the original pants. Then I took basically an entire day just to sand everything I sculpted down. And with everything ready to go, it's prime time. I started with the skin since I have to mask off the hands later on to do the sleeves. As usual, I used some brown for shading and a Vallejo flesh tone for the skin. I also have to mask off the boots to do the pants, so I added a little bit of gray for some shading since the sculpt was really flat and it needed some extra color to make it pop. Then I added in some white to blend in the shading and also cool down the temperature of the gray. I sprayed on a matte clear coat to protect the paint job so far, and once everything was masked off, I got started on the black sections, starting with the sleeves. After everything had some good coverage, I added in some dark gray on top of the black as a highlight layer. I also used this dark gray as a shadow layer for the tunic. Then I added a lighter gray on top as the blending layer. For his hair, I used a golden yellow ochre in all of the crevices. And despite it looking exactly the same tone in all of my footage, I used progressively lighter shades of yellow as we moved closer to the tips of the hair. And lastly, to finish off airbrushing, I painted in his sash red. Moving on to the facial details, I dotted in his eyes using an acrylic paint marker, and then painted in those dark eye lines that he has in the manga, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way. I added in some panel liners into his mouth to act as an outline for his teeth, but for now it looks like he just ate a bunch of chocolate. After painting in his pupils with a bright emerald, I filled in his eyes and his mouth with some white, cleaning up all of my line work. Then I hand painted in all the wrinkles and details on his face using some brown. And filled in his eyebrows with a creamy yellow. As a finishing touch, I had to paint in his bling with some green and gold on his earring and some silver on his time ring. Before I finish up, I had to make sure that I unmasked everything.
Hello, monkeys!
Then I added a matte clear coat to protect the paint application and to remove the shine from the airbrush paints. Then to give the earring an extra shine, I used some UV resin on the green bulbous part. And all that was left to do was to put everything back together.
Subarashi-na.
Here's the final result. Let me know what you think in the comments, and whether or not you think he'll show up in the remastered Dragon Ball Super anime. Thanks to Applethroat for collaborating on this project, and make sure you check out his channel. Thanks to Rifty Beats for letting me use his music, and of course, thanks to all my members, with special thanks to my newest members, Green Turret and DJ Save Train, who by the way has some awesome K-pop remixes on his channel, so make sure you go check that out if you're into that too. Membership to the channel is $2 a month, where you can help support the channel directly and get some behind the scenes looks of what I'm working on. You can find everything I used in the video linked in the description as affiliate links. If you buy anything after you click the link, it'll help support the channel without any additional cost to you. And if you like my work, leave a thumbs up, drop a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon so you know when my next video is going to drop. Thanks for watching. See you next time.